Hey, good to see everybody this morning. So this is the last part of a talk that I've been giving, a series of talks about how to improve our Zazen or our meditation experience. How do we make our Zazen better? And the last point I want to make, this is point 8, is the importance of enjoying our practice, enjoying our meditation. That's number 8. And the reason why joy, happiness, you could say play, fun, is so important is that if we don't enjoy the practice, we won't continue it. My teacher she lived in Japan for 23 years, and she trained at several Zen monasteries, living at them for 15 of those years. And when she returned to the United States, in part to take care of her mother, she went to see Thich Nhat Hanh in Plum Village, France, because she wasn't sure. This was in the early 1990s, late 1980s, when she had finished her training in Japan. And she wasn't sure how to introduce English speakers to a predominantly Japanese practice. She had learned it 100% in Japanese, not relying on English at all, if you can imagine. So we're really very much in the early stages of the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma being transmitted to the Western world, really early stages. Prior to the 80s, 70s, a lot of Dharma was not, it was all in a foreign language, a language that's foreign to us, right? Non-English. So it's an amazing thing that's happening right now, that we're hearing the Dharma in English. And the question of, well, what is that? What is the Dharma is another question. But when she returned, she wanted to know, how do I offer this in English? So she went to see Thich Nhat Hanh, because he at that time had some success as a Vietnamese monk reaching Americans in English. So she went to practice with him, and he saw how she was sitting, her meditation practice. And he saw how serious she was, because that was her training. I mean, in Japan, if you moved, somebody would be yelling at you. We don't do that here. And there was just this kind of a strictness or seriousness to the practice. And I don't think, and I don't want to, I can't say that I'm speaking for her experience, but he must have seen some, really, dedication, discipline. But he said to her, you can enjoy your sitting, you can enjoy your breathing, you can enjoy your life. And she said to us, she said, I don't remember ever hearing that instruction. I don't remember ever hearing that instruction in Japanese. So, hearing that directly from a teacher of his reach made a deep impression on her, and she realized, oh yeah, we can actually enjoy this practice. It doesn't have to be serious. And that's not to undermine the reasons why we come to practice in the first place. I think almost everybody here comes because there's some need for healing, there's something that needs to be addressed. And to think about joy might be not even a thought. But putting it as something to prioritize, as, well, wait a minute, am I enjoying this practice? Do I like it? To think about that as a possible question when you're sitting could have a potentially transformative experience for us. There's a couple of places in Zen Master Dogen's writing where he talks about joy explicitly, and one of them is one of his earliest writings about how to sit Zazen. one of the first things he wrote. And towards the end of his instructions for how to sit Zazen. Zazen, when I say Zazen, I'm referring to seated Zen, often translated as meditation. And he says at the end of that, instructions, universal instructions for meditation. He says, the Chinese characters, or in Japanese it reads, Anraku no Homon. Ho is Dharma, Mon means door, a Dharma door, a Dharma gate, a Dharma gateway, an entrance into the Dharma. Right? He says, Zazen Anraku no Homon. So seated meditation is the Dharma door to Anraku. An means ease or peace, and Raku means joy. My teacher's mother's name, interestingly, my teacher offered the precepts to her mother, and she received them. And her name was Raku En. Raku meaning joyful. So Raku, and the Chinese character Raku has an important meaning. It is connected with, well, if you look at it closely, it has to do with a drum. One translation of it has to do with a drum making sound. A drum on a stand making sound. And the character for Raku is related to the way of saying music, the way of saying dance, even. So music, dance, these are things that lift us up. And we need that. We need that as far. So Dogen is saying in his seminal instructions to us, in the 13th century, that Zazen is the gateway to joy and ease, a Dharma gateway to joy and ease. So he's really saying, right, this is is our Zazen joyful? Now you might think, how can I sit with joy when I'm not feeling joyful? It's a legitimate question. If you don't feel, isn't that disingenuous to say that I'm experiencing joy when I'm not? And that's an important question to address. When I myself studied with Thich Nhat Hanh, I went to a 3-week retreat of his in 2006, and we studied the Sutra on Mindful Breathing, which is one of the early and the original teachings of the Buddha. And in that sutra, it also talks about the experience of feeling joy as part of the practice. And Thich Nhat Hanh really expanded on that aspect of it. And he pointed out something culturally different between Asian culture, maybe in less modern times, Indian culture, a difference between the time in which the Buddha spoke and the Western culture, Western way of thinking. He pointed out that we have in the West this dichotomy between mind and body, this mind-body duality. That's really, my sense of it is that has really affected the way that we understand ourselves. And when we're sitting in meditation, that affects the way that we sit in meditation. It, of course, has implications for our wider life as well. But the main thing is that we tend, thanks to the philosopher Descartes, to put mind above body, thought above feeling, or the physicalness, physicality. Physicality as being kind of unrefined, or even something to distance ourselves from. And that's not the case in much of the world, other cultures and other times in the world, where mind and body are deeply interwoven, deeply interconnected. So Thich Nhat Hanh has this practice. He calls it a practice. It is a practice of smiling. The practice of smiling. This is really important. And if we practice smiling, if you see somebody smile, how does that affect you? Oftentimes when I see somebody else, it doesn't have to be a big toothy grin. Something somewhat, even a little bit sincere, just as a practice. And Thich Nhat Hanh calls it the yoga of the mouth. Right? You just turn out. It's a physical practice. Yeah. And he says, but if you put your body on a lower level than your mind, if your mind is superior to your body, then you can convince yourself that if you're not happy mentally, then there's no way that the body is going to change. But he says, lift the body up, put it on the same par as the mind. If you change the body, the mind will change. Right? So it's a bottom-up approach, as opposed to I have to feel or intellectually understand happiness in order to feel happiness. He takes a bottom-up approach. Right? Change your posture of your face. When we think of posture, we often straighten up our back. But the posture of our face also has a posture. If we have a serious face, then we're going to experience seriousness. If we have a light complexion, then consequently the mind will also change. And it has to do with, though, the overcoming that duality that we experience here as the separation between body and mind. There's a couple of Buddhist stories I want to share on this note. One is the story of Puna. Puna was he played sitar before he was a monk. This is a monk in the Buddha's time. He played some kind of an instrument, a stringed instrument. I don't know if it was a sitar, but let's just say it was a sitar. He was a musician, and he took his job very seriously. But he decided he was not satisfied completely, so he went to study with the Buddha. He became a monk. And he, of course, took his practice very seriously, just as he did his former life. It just went from one thing to the other. And the Buddha saw how assiduously he was practicing, and that he was starting to lose sight of his energy. His energy was waning. He was too serious. So the Buddha said to him, Puna, you used to play the sitar, right? Before you became a monk. Yes, world honored one, I used to play. What happens, the Buddha asked him, if your strings are too tight, if they're made too tight on your instrument? Well, world honored one, if I strum them, then they will break. And the Buddha asked him then, well, what happens if the strings are too loose? And he said, my Lord, if they're too loose, if I strum them, they won't make any sound. So the Buddha said to him, in the same way, that's how we have to be with our practice. Not making those strings not making them too tight, nor too loose, so that they make sound. We can think about that for our own body, mind. How are we practicing when we come to sit? Is this body, mind tuned, in a sense? Is it tuned in properly? Have we tuned it? Have we tuned it when we sat down in Zazen? Or if we haven't, maybe we can use Zazen as an opportunity. Okay, let's tune this one way or the other. The lotus flower is also one of the symbols of Buddhism. That the flower of enlightenment only blooms when it's connected to the mud in the water. Right? The lotus flower enlightenment is not disconnected from our delusions, from our anger, from our greed. there's a direct relationship. And so the practice is about transforming our greed, hate, and delusion into joy, right? One of my teachers at Tassajara, she said, you don't have to wait until you're enlightened to be happy. Yeah, I thought, I'm really glad she said that. Because I got a ways to go myself. Yeah, so is joy a part of our practice? Is fun, is play a part of our practice? In the Lotus Sutra, there's a piece in the Lotus Sutra where it talks about the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. And it says that Avalokiteshvara, she or he, Shabda Sekai, she finds play, she plays in the world of suffering. Avalokiteshvara plays, and this is not to be dismissive of the really serious suffering that people go through, but to remind us that we can find joy even in the midst of samsara. We can find joy even, my teacher would say, despite any of the D words. We can enjoy our practice despite death, disease, deluge, disaster. We can still find joy. And she said, she's coming from basing that on her own experience, coming from Thich Nhat Hanh, somebody who experienced war, who experienced removing dead bodies from towns, reconstructing whole villages after they were bombed. This is coming from somebody like that, from him, that you can still enjoy, you can still experience joy in your practice. So that's a challenge. It's a challenge for us. That's a challenge, right? It's a challenge. We may not be there. That's okay, but it's possible. It is possible. Am I always joyful and happy? Absolutely not. No, that's where my practice lies. That's where my practice lies. So keeping that kind of light at the end of the tunnel there, especially, if we can remind ourselves, or, you come sit, listen to the Dharma, it should be it can be a potentially joyful experience. How do we find that joy? And it's not just about in meditation, because Dogen talks about the three minds in his instructions for cooking. So whether it's cooking, cleaning, household tasks, being with your family, your job, you can find these three minds. One of them is joyful mind, right? The joyful mind. He wants us to cook with joyful mind. Whatever activities you do, if you do it with joy, that's going to infect the activity, and then that energy goes into it. And whoever is in touch with that energy, they get it too. So we can we find or include joyful parts of our life as a part of our practice as well? Or do we relegate those to outside of the realm of practice, right? Do we make that sharp distinction? Practice is serious, then there's, joy, I'm not really practicing now. We don't have to make that false distinction, is what I'm suggesting. Right. Now, the second thing I want to share is a recent call I had with my teacher, Diane Banaj Roshi, and she lives in a I don't know if it's not assisted living. I think it's considered a nursing home at this point for her. And whereas she does have some very serious memory issues. I don't know if she's been formally diagnosed at this point with dementia, but even in the course of a conversation, she'll repeat questions that were already answered within a minute of each other. And when I tried to call her over the phone, for example, she couldn't remember who she was talking to, and it was just a 5-minute conversation. So I decided that this last conversation, it kind of was discouraging to me when I called her. So I said, okay, well this time I'll do a Zoom call, so this way she can see my face, and maybe that will help. And indeed, it went much better, and she remembered, it wasn't that part of it wasn't an issue, but still, there were these memory lapses in the course of the call. But as I started out the call, I was kind of enthusiastic. I said, Neosho, we call her Neosho, meaning female teacher. That's what she requested that we call her. So that's how I'm accustomed to talking with her. So I said, Neosho, we're all destined towards Buddhahood. And she said to me, and I was somewhat enthusiastic about it. We're all going there, right? And so she said, whoa, hold on. She's kind of pulling my reins back. He said, you gotta have that boing. You gotta have a boing in your practice. You're gonna fall. You're going to lose sight of the goal. You're gonna lose. She didn't say that, but the sense I got from her is that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to lose your desire for enlightenment. But you gotta have the boing. What's the boing? The bounce. Our practice has a bounce to it. We get thrown down, but we're like a rubber ball on a cement. It bounces back. That's the miracle of this practice. Maybe some of you have experienced that at times, where you're just like, you give up. You're like, oh, forget this practice. And then from out of nowhere, it comes back. Like, wow, oh, here it is. The boing. And we see that in the natural world. Right, as all the leaves come down now, the trees appear to be dead. In springtime, the trees have their boing too. The animals, they go into hibernation, then boing, they come back. We go to sleep at night, we wake up in the morning, there's that boing. Thank Buddha for the boing. Or thank life for the boing. I don't care who you want to thank. There is a boing there that is beyond our comprehension. And that, we should really pay attention to that, especially when we get discouraged. Right? We get that diagnosis, or the results of such and such. Right? The bad news, the injury. Right? All of those things happen to us, and we have to allow them. We can't ignore them. But there's also a boing. Right? And the last thing I want to share is another thing my teacher would say to us is our motto in Zen. She said the motto of the Benedictines is work and prayer. That's the Benedictine motto: work and pray. And she said our motto is work hard, play hard. Right, you gotta have that play. Work hard, play hard. And I want to share one last story, and that is the story of the monk going on pilgrimage, where there's a monk in ancient China. He's been practicing at the temple for many months, maybe even more than a year or so, and so he's been somewhat cloistered in that environment. And ancient China, as well as in pre-modern Japan, the monks would leave the temple, the training temple, for a period of time and go out on pilgrimage and wander the countryside, go to various places, live on alms, sleep where their bodies were, wherever they happened to be, maybe at a shrine or in a nature sanctuary or on the street, on a park bench. So this monk was going out on pilgrimage. He packed up got his belongings together, his staff, he was getting ready to leave, and his teacher says, "Where are you going?" teacher, of course, knew where he was going, but the monk says, "I'm going on pilgrimage," and the teacher says, "Well, what's the purpose of that?" And the monk said, "I don't know." And the teacher said, "Not knowing is most intimate. That not knowing, that openness to curiosity, that's foundational to our practice. And it's deeply intertwined with the love of play, the curiosity, the mind of a child, the beginner's mind, right? When you see a little baby, and they smile at you, like, oh my goodness, wow. And they're so curious about your face, they want to touch it. They want to touch your face. They see something and they want to grab it. Things that we're not even interested in anymore as adults. The fork, the knife. All right. But they're so curious. The bowl, and then you watch it. It goes on the floor, broken. That love of everything around you, the sense of mystery. That's the heart of our practice. Not that we have answers. We don't know. We don't know what lies in our future, right? Maybe we have some inkling, but we can't be totally sure. So not knowing fully our destination. Right? We're on this planet, this blue bronze planet spinning in the middle of nowhere. Where are we? You're just spinning in the Milky Way galaxy somewhere. I have no idea where we are. So get the big picture. Daishin is not my name, but the big mind, big heart. That's another one of Dogen's 3 minds for the Tenzo. There's joyful mind, there's big mind, and there's grandmotherly mind. Those are the 3 minds we want to cultivate. They're all intertwined in our practice. And so my teacher, I remember when I first met her at Bucknell University, she taught us how to do Zazen, and I was just enraptured with what I was learning at that time. It was 1994, and that time you didn't have internet access. There was not many quality books on Buddhism. So to meet a real teacher in person and hear her talk, and I was just enraptured with what she was saying. It was all novel to me. And she said to us, "I don't need a vacation. I just go outside and I walk in the grass in my bare feet, and I can feel the way the grass feels, and I'm in a whole nother world." I was like, wow. And that's the power of our mindfulness. When we're really mindful and we can really experience the present moment, we're on vacation. We can be on vacation, you know? So I'll end with this poem, and you can ask questions if you like. Can you hear the children at play? What is it that allows that boing? Recover your play, do it without delay. Thank you.
Daishin?
Yeah.
Diane's mother's Dharma name?
Mm-hmm.
Is it, what was it again?
Raku N.
Raku again. Okay.
Yeah, Raku N.
Any similar to Riak?
No, it's different. Raku means abbreviated.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, Raku Fusatsu.
Yeah. And it's different from Raku.
And that's Raku Su, abbreviated road.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
it's the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Just made me think of something. My brother from New York came a couple times to visit here when Nona was here,
Oh.
and he told me once afterward. He said, "People are so serious here. I didn't see anybody smile." You know, And then he came at a later time and, I think we were all, milling around and laughing and joking, and he says, oh, that was different, but, yeah, sometimes Nonan put the, I don't know, the damper on things, although he always said he loved to, hear us down here, laughing and stuff like that. So,
Absolutely, and I have too. I totally agree with you with your brother's experiences. He was extraordinarily heavy at times and intimidating, and he also had a very playful nature too. If
Yeah.
you got to know him a little bit, I remember he was on my case for not being happy.
was he?
You got on my case, and he said, "You should enjoy practice. What are you doing? You're always serious. You just go around. You wear black all the time." Of course, I was supposed to be wearing black all the time. He said, "Go wear something that's bright." So I called my mother and I said, "Can you send me my red sweatshirt?" So I got it in the mail, and I put it on. A couple of weeks later, I put it on, and Nonan saw it, and he just like lit up. He was all full of energy.
Yeah, Nolan told me to lighten up one time the first year here.
Oh,
Lighten
geez.
up, George. I'm serious. I thought he was pulling my leg. You actually want to lighten up, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's so much a question, but if you look at some of the Buddha statues, like the Theravada ones, you'll see they sometimes have like a little smile. Just like the tiniest little hint, right? On their faces.
Right.
It ties in with what you were talking about.
Yeah. And Thich Nhat Hanh also, he says, when you choose a Buddha statue for your home altar, to check it, make sure it has that slight smile on it, and that's part of the Zen tradition too. That's the transmission of the Dharma came through a smile. Mahakashapa smiles when the Buddha twirls the flower in his hand, and that was, the Buddha acknowledged that the transmission of the Dharma through the smile. So, yeah, it has a place in Zen, a very central place there. But it's easy to overlook, especially if you come in, it's all silent and people look serious and all that. That's good. That's important. That has its place too, right? Seriousness certainly has its place. By the way, we'll be sitting a sesshin in just a couple of months. A couple of weeks, rather. The end of the year, Rohatsu Sesshin. So taste the sesshin. That's an important piece of our practice too. And you will experience the boing there in sesshin. You just, energy just seems to collapse completely, and then it comes back. Wait for that boing. But any one of us can do sesshin, even if it's for a half a day. Come sit. And, what is it, the 5th through the 8th we're doing it?
4th.
4th through the 8th, yeah. It's to commemorate the Buddha's enlightenment. It's traditionally done the 1st through the 8th of December. And we'll be doing our version the 4th through the 8th. So it's a good opportunity to really deepen, your concentration, experience some joy, experience the four minds: loving kindness, compassion, joy in others' happiness, and equanimity. You get those minds when you sit sesshin. And you nourish them. We're nourishing those minds in sesshin. And it's so important, we don't necessarily have opportunities to do that, or we get seeds watered in other places that may water seeds of anger, seeds of depression, seeds of anxiety. Those get watered plenty. Right? So come to the Zendo, come to the Zen Center, and we'll water the other ones. We'll get the other ones going. And so that we need those, right? We need that. That keeps us going. Yeah.
Well, years before I came into practice, I was looking up the Zen Center, And the writer was saying, Zazen and Kanhan, and these were in the meeting times. And then it got down there and they said, after all the stuff they said, sessions are coming and all this, I didn't know what any of it meant, But we are not a glum lot. Was the final statement. That I remember. We are not a glum lot.
That's great.
That's a line from the Big Book of AA.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that was in this, yeah, maybe so, but
maybe they
yeah,
got
that
it
was
from
in
that.
that, maybe they, yeah,
There are a lot of similarities. Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna mention that, sometimes during sesshin, like, the third day or something, and you're sitting in the afternoon, you've been sitting and just thinking, and sometimes I've just had the most intense joy come up in those moments, just these incredibly warm feelings, that occasionally come up. Or sometimes after a couple of days of sesshin, everything seems funny to me.
Yeah,
I'll be sitting there, I'll be trying to stifle, a laugh sometimes.
Right, yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah, you'd had a few of those orioke meals.
In Ordeoki for sure, yeah.
I'm gonna buy extra cookies to make us through the any kind of rough patch.
Excellent, yes.
Great. All right, well, let's bring it to a close. Is there any other announcements that need to be made?
Well, Rohatsu, that's kind of the big thing coming up.
Well, announce how it works with like the nighttime is free, to sign up for the day.
Yeah, the registration is very flexible. You can sign up by the day, so the payment is by the day. And even if you can't register for participating in the daytime, the evening sessions are open to everyone. So anyone can come in for the evening service.
And there's wonderful energy there. Yeah, you'll get to.
Is
And we'll
that
make
schedule
that,
online?
pardon?
Is the schedule online?
I'll make sure that it is, yeah, so people can tell when to come in.
Sure.
Yeah, you get to be, so when people are sitting sesshin all day long for several days, there's an energy that's really generated here. And if you come in just for the evening, then you get to be the recipient of that without doing any work. That's
We
good.
can save all beings.
You get to, you come in there and you just feel like, wow, this is
Right.
I also didn't want to ignore folks online. If anybody had anything to share, please. All right then.
We're not gonna do our cushions, we're just gonna do the 4 vows, which is on page 2. May this merit extend universally to all, so that we together with all beings realize the way we are.
I